It's like the relationship between honey and high fructose corn syrup. Like Facebook is high fructose corn syrup, and we know how bad that is. Honey's really good for you, so no, never stop eating honey. But no, yeah, never ever let Facebook take the place of real community. Because I mean, we got a living, breathing Facebook at Metalwork. It's, everybody knows what your mood is.
Could you talk a little bit about your neighbors? You mentioned a little bit about the synergy between the two places, but I don't know how much people may be familiar with Open Harvest.
Oh, okay, yeah. Open Harvest is a 30-year-old food co-op that provides organic, natural foods, and more than any other thing that's important is they also support local foods. They got special labeling for it. So if you guys want to be locavores, like I want to be someday, check out that store because Super Saver does have organic, but it's organic that's from Chile. And maybe they have local produce, but it's, those guys are the centralized, whatever's best is best for the top, not for the workers there. Open Harvest is more of a co-op, more of a collective mindset. I'm not saying they're perfect, but Metalwork's not perfect either. But that's the choice that you guys can make, is where you vote with your dollars, right? The whole slogan, vote with your dollars. And then as a tangent of that, instead of just voting with your dollars, vote with your hands by doing stuff. You can go ahead and vote with dollars, that's fine. Go ahead and buy some green stuff, that's great. But when it comes to really changing the world, you have to jiggle some stuff around and transform some things to make them way more sustainable. So, but Open Harvest is a great place, and Pioneers Park Nature Center is a great place. Friends of Wilderness Park, the group, is a great organization, and these are all places things that you can connect to in this community, in this ecology.
Now, you mentioned a little bit about organic, and I think she talks about it a little bit in the book, but one of the things to keep in mind is that sometimes it's not always a clear-cut choice when you're making a decision what is going to have the most positive impact, because you know organic's good and you know that local's good. So, yeah, when there are apples from New Zealand, and I've written that on the comment cards at Open Harvest. Really, we don't have apples in Nebraska?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
That sometimes you can weigh it out, and it might be a better choice to buy a sustainably grown but non-organic local apple. But my point in making this distinction is that it's not always a very clear-cut decision, but you can weigh those things out and decide either, yeah, I'm going to go for the organic that came from New Zealand, or I'm going to buy the locally grown, sustainably grown apple. You're weighing one thing against another, but sometimes it's complicated.
Yeah, I get bison meat from a friend who lives in Beatrice, and he doesn't have it certified organic, but I know him. He grass feeds his bison, and this is a food source that is way more healthy and way more nutritious for you than antibiotic cattle. So for me personally, I imagine tracking where it comes from, right? And whatever uses less oil is the choice to use, because that lifeblood is not going to be around for very long at all. And the way we're really going to be able to build these lifeboats away from the sinking ship is if we understand how to live without this oil. And if we start doing that now, it's going to be so much easier to transition away from that stuff. I mean, if that means, supporting wind energy or whatever, that's cool. But if you can track and see where less oil is being used, that's awesome. Now, saying that, coffee is a horrible user of oil. I mean, you can only grow coffee 1,000 miles away from the equator. And so half of the world is the Pacific Ocean. So, a lot of that stuff is it's always shipped in, So what does Metalwork do about the whole oil situation? Well, luckily, what Metalwork does is not really provide so much coffee as it does provide a space to sit and chat and be a commons area for people. So down the road, we're going to start harvesting local teas and start transitioning to become a tea house instead of a coffee house.
You'll still serve coffee, won't you?
Yeah, we'll probably have
Thank
some
you.
coffee. Don't worry. But you know, that's a way where you reduce the oil, you know. And it's the ways of adapting, thinking about this stuff ahead of time is really half of it. And I'm assuming like all of you guys, by reading this book, have at least have some sort of like perception change. And I hope that that perception change, you know, results into changing how you live and how you make your decisions, and you know, inspires you to really get your hands dirty and really connect with things, because you know, we have a lot of people that think in a decent way, but we need a lot more people that are, you know, getting it done, like doing it, like participating, not in rallies. You know, sustainability is a lifestyle. It's not an event. You know, you gotta wake up, look at everything you do, and say, you know, does this honor my grandchildren? Does this honor Wilderness Park? Does this honor the oak tree that's in my yard? You know, and if it doesn't, then okay, what system can I create in my life that's going to circumvent that problem or solve it? And I think she talked about that in like systems, thinking in systems.
Yep, that's right.
And we can all make those decisions. We make decisions every day unconsciously. It's time to get conscious. Booyah.
Well, and what's interesting is it seems like, you know, when you talk about trying to live locally, it seems like that's a really radical idea. But that's the way everybody lived until about 60 years ago.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
local. And it is, as you've learned some about the industrial food systems, what kinds of things contributed to that. We're farther and farther away from our food sources. Now, if you've traveled to other places, you might have experienced something different. My only real, I've been to Australia too, but I went to Italy, and the food system there is really different. And I've mentioned that they spend more time eating but consume way fewer calories. Every day, even in the middle of Rome, we spent a week in Rome and 2 weeks on Elba. It was all with my husband's family. And it's an urban area, but people get on their way home from work, they live in apartments. They have small refrigerators. They don't store pantries like we do in big quantities of food. There's a bakery, there's a butcher, and there's a produce truck out on the street. Okay, and it's an urban area. There are farmers that drive into Rome every day, and people buy fresh, the meat, the baked bread, and the vegetables and fruit off the truck on their way home from work. And it's all really good, fresh stuff, and it's local, and it's possible to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then here we are in America's heartland. We ought to be able to.
So easy to get there. I mean, it's just like, just at the edge,
Yeah.
It's just like, that's why the CSAs are so important.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, if you start supporting them, other farmers are going to see that they're doing way better off than supporting ConAgra and Monsanto, or being supported by, or whatever the reciprocal exchange is there.
Right.
Oh, this looks like a good idea. We should do this. I mean, just think if it was just CSAs all over the place, fresh food all over the place, sustainably grown too. I mean, organically, sustainably grown, that really honored the ecosystem. I mean, that, and just doing stuff too, like with permaculture. You guys know what permaculture is?
We have not talked about permaculture.
You haven't talked about permaculture? Okay, permaculture is so cool. All right, permaculture is a way of creating human societies that are sustainable, which are based partially in indigenous wisdom and also just understanding ecology and working within those systems of nature. So my house, what I'm doing is I understand that the Pawnee lived here 300 years ago, and they did agriculture too. Not the totalitarian agriculture that we practice today, but they did a Three Sisters Guild horticulture kind of garden with corn, beans, and squash. Now with corn, it takes nitrogen out of the ground, makes food for us, and has these really excellent large stalks that beans, which actually put nitrogen back into the ground, and then can spiral up these corn stalks. So there's a mutualistic relationship. The squash covers the ground around it with these broad leaves and their vines, and make sure that none of the weeds compete with the corn so the corn can be strong. So this is a very simple permaculture. It's called a Three Sisters Guild. And it was preeminent in North America before colonists came here. That's how they got some of their food. With the broad spectrum of human variations, different tribes were more sedentary than the others. The ones that, like the Pawnee, that would have 2 buffalo hunts every year, this is where they get their grains and their vegetables and stuff, besides like wild edibles and stuff. But permaculture, I mean, if permaculture was adopted on a large scale, then a lot of our problems would be solved because that's honoring the ecology.